Guys, welcome to our Tuesday night podcast. We are live tonight. Melissa and I are going to talk about selling your house in this crazy market that we have right now. It is the seller's market. And I'll tell you what, this is probably for me, it's just kind of like, it just keeps going and going and going. And just when you think it's going to stop or slow down, it just keeps going. Doesn't matter whether it's
Mhm.
holiday time. Tonight, we're going to talk about the top tips when selling your home in this hot seller's market. Spring is coming right around the corner. It's a time when everybody's thinking about the most optimal time of year to sell, the spring. And we're going to share some tips, some strategies that we use here at Sachs Realty. I'm Todd Sachs. I'm your broker and founder of Sachs Realty and the host of your show tonight. For the next hour, we hope to give you some good, valuable takeaways, some good information. No matter whether you're a seller or a buyer, you're going to learn from this too. And if you're a real estate agent, maybe you'll pick up some tips from us tonight. And guys, we are a Maryland brokerage here. So we are talking about what we do here in Maryland. If you're anywhere else in the United States, please check your state laws. I'm only licensed in Maryland, but if you need help anywhere other than Maryland, I have an amazing broker network. I'll be glad to point you in the right direction. Melissa and I get to work together every single day. We get to battle these challenges together. Melissa?
Yeah. Yes. Hi, guys. It's fun to be back again. Last week we were giving buyer tips, and this week we're giving seller tips. So it was really great because today, actually, Todd and I went on a listing appointment. And so it was very timely. And I'm excited to just get into it and just get started. Um, So one of the biggest questions that the of the appointment today was, what do we do to get our home ready? To get on the market. What do we do? What do we prepare? And I have a question. What when you're considering things to do and not to do, is there a method or rule of thumb that you recommend?
Yes, we get that a lot. Do we paint? Do we replace flooring, carpeting, um, worn out systems that are end of life? And guys, when we're talking about selling your house, a lot of times right now we hear sellers say things like they don't really want to do much of anything because they know, it's an amazing market out there and they don't feel that they need to actually sell their house. And actually, right now, it's never been a more important time to be prepared in selling your house because some of the things we're going to talk about are the pressures on sellers as far as buying properties, but also trying to maximize top dollar. And in reality, your buyers, most of them need loans. Not everybody can pay cash, and they're governed by appraisals. So we're going to talk about some strategies on how to kind of work overprice the overpriced market and not lose the deal. But Melissa, the question, I mean, I always like to recommend to people to do things that will bring them constructive returns.
Mm-hmm.
Now, obviously, if it's something that's broken, and a roof is a good example of that, if your roof is leaking, you have to fix it. That's not necessarily a constructive return. It doesn't mean if you spend 10,000 you're going to make 5,000 on it, and so your house is going to be worth 15,000 more. But with a roof, it's going to matter whether it sells or not, whether it's appealing or not. I mean, nobody wants to buy a house with a leaky roof. But when we're talking about what do they do and what should they do, what shouldn't they do, we'll just kind of talk about some specifics. So there are things that you can do to your house that are maintenance items that you can do yourself, like a fresh coat of paint or replacing, bad carpeting or bad flooring, finishing things in your house like trim that are, unfinished, replacing appliances that are worn or outdated or not working. But there are other things too that sometimes I recommend when I'm going out on a listing appointment. And I'll give you an example. One time in this past year, I sold a house that had a 450-foot driveway. and it had plenty of land. It was over 3 acres surrounding the house, but the driveway, because the seller parked in the garage all the time, it was very easy for them to back out and pull down the driveway. But when
Yeah.
guests come over, there was really no turnaround. So as a result, what happened, because people that were coming to preview the home weren't pulling into the garage, they were all having a hard time either turning around or backing up. So these are the kinds of things, where for $3,000, and a turnaround pad, we could have appealed to a larger audience of buyers that simply said, well, I don't like backing out of the driveway, because a lot of people can't back out. They can't back. And well, a lot of people can't that question their driving skills anyway. But
Oh, right.
so when you're looking at things like that, you want to make sure that if it's something that you can do to make it more appealing, you certainly listen to your agent, but think about the things that have been problems maybe for your guests, your visitors to come over. Lawn areas. Everybody likes a nice lawn. If you have a decent property where you would expect to entertain or play outside, and you have a lot of trees that are around, it may be dirt, because no sunlight's getting to the grass. So, landscaping is always something nice to do. Um,
I think it would be
uh,
hard though to present those ideas. I mean, if people are going in where, they're done. They're ready to move, whatever that move may be. I think it would be probably challenging for many of them to, putting a $3,000 change to their driveway, or doing, some, whether they had a sloping yard and creating a yard. I think it would be hard to, have them on board to make those changes. So, what do you recommend when you have a situation like that?
well, I mean, they need good advisors, right? So, I mean, their agent should be their number one advisor. A good agent is going to be looking at these things and determining what some of the stumbling blocks could be for buyers to really fall in love with the property, the house. And so they should be suggesting and giving ideas, and then the sellers have to determine whether they have the money to spend. So that could
Yeah.
be, a deterrent to make the corrective action. But the idea when you're selling a house is certainly you want as many people interested in your property as possible within a very short time period, especially in today's market. So anything that you can do that makes it uh, more desirable, that is within your ability to do so, and it's going to help you get more money for your house, I think that you should try and do it. So that would require, though, and sometimes it requires kind of preparing, right? Not just determining to put your house on the market, calling a realtor in, and listing it 2 weeks later. I always say, hey, look, are you planning on selling within the next 3 to 6 months? If you are, some people have to sell sooner than that. But if you are, go ahead and get a couple agents to come in, neighborhood experts that understand where you live, and what people are looking for in those areas, and get some advice from them.
Do you think, for example, wallpaper is something that is a must that must come down, or do you think that not necessarily?
I think move-in ready homes right now are bringing the highest dollar, and a lot of people don't have the ability um, to mess with stuff, to fix things up. I mean, people aren't handy, most people, and with everybody or a lot of people working from home right now, and they're busy. So their homes or their offices. In some situations, it's the classroom, even if it's only a couple days a week, and they want something that they can experience as little disruption as possible. So it all depends on what the market, what other houses are for sale. If you're the only house in the neighborhood and you have ugly wallpaper, or what most people would consider ugly, was 1950s or 60s, and there's been no updating or upgrades to the house, and it's the only house in the neighborhood, then hey, it may not matter. But if you're having a couple agents come over and they're all saying that the wallpaper needs to be taken down, it's something to consider. First impression is critically important when you're selling a house. And most people start their search online. I get people a lot of times who are like, well, can you use the pictures from 3 years ago, or last year when we tried to sell it? And, if it doesn't look like what it does now, the answer, in my opinion, is always no. We need, current pictures because we want people to see what they're seeing when they get there. We don't want people to waste their time. We don't want disappointment. We don't want the schedules filled up with people that will be turned away when they walk in the door. So if it is wallpaper, just make sure it's represented well. Show it,
Yeah. And then
and
talking about how you said, first impression is everything. And the curb appeal, I know, is something that's very important. Do you feel that, cleaning up and adding in the landscaping and doing that is a return on investment for putting your money into, creating really nice, organized, clean looking front of the home?
yeah, curb appeal is probably the most important part. It kind of sets the stage when someone is pulling up. When they walk up to the front door, the side door, wherever they're going in the house, their first impression is going to be what they're looking for throughout their visit. So, if things look rough outside, there's trees growing out of the gutters, then absolutely people are going to be kind of set back by that. And it kind of sets that mood that when they're walking in, they're looking for other things that could be wrong. So if the curb appeal is nice, it's clean, um, it kind of does the exact opposite. It does the same thing, but in the exact opposite fashion. It makes them excited. They go, oh, it's cute, it's nice, beautiful, I love it. And it's kind of setting that tone when they walk in the whatever door they come in.
Yeah. And then we hear a lot, like when we go see, when show properties, like where are the boundary lines? Where is that? What are your thoughts about possibly doing that prior to listing? Is that something you would recommend or maybe advise?
If the seller does not know where the property lines are and can't identify those to the agent, and they're not marked in some way with some kind of a boundary map that can be attached to the listing, I absolutely think it's critical. It's important. They should, the property corners, in my opinion, should be well staked. And it's sort of, out of a lot of what I hear from buyers agents, or if I'm there at an open house, a lot of times the people are saying, where are the boundaries? Do you know what the property lines are? Um, you know, we want to try and accomplish as much as we can during that visit or online, and showing them exactly what they're looking at. A lot of times, if you can identify the property lines from like the GIS map, also it helps with encroachments. I mean, Melissa, we've dealt with quite a
I
few
know, I
encroachments
know.
this year. And, with a pool house going over the property line, half a house over on the neighbor's property line. So, not just marking out the boundaries, but being familiar with, any issues that could cause you problems down the road as you're going through the sale process. But definitely, if the lot doesn't look as big, or it goes in a weird shape, or it's questioned as to whether the neighbor, where the lines are for the neighbor, people want to know that up front. So I
Yeah.
definitely recommend getting a property survey. Depending on how big the property is, I mean, it could be $1,000
Yeah.
or more.
Yeah. 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 Very true. Let's move into the inside of the home. And I know for me personally, lighting really is incredibly important. It sets the mood, sets the tone. And when you have really good lighting, it makes a difference.
It does. It kind of, it dates the house when there's no ceiling lights. It's one thing, to have a ceiling fan or chandelier. It can really date the house. So um, I recommend, if you have really old ceiling fans, they're pretty inexpensive, especially they're usually in main rooms like living rooms, bedrooms, things like that. maybe updating some of those fixtures that you see. It's like, they're fixtures in the house. So right there is perfect example on the
Yeah.
screen of what recessed lighting looks like. Um, you know, you could spend a couple $1,000s on it in some main rooms. Again, living room, primary bedrooms, basements. It adds a lot. Hallways, recessed lighting definitely adds a lot of wow factor. And especially if you don't have a lot of natural light in a house, depending on when the house was built. A lot of times you'll see the older, 40s, 50s, and 60s houses, especially ones that are brick, they have very restricted um, windows. They're not really very tall. So,
Hmm.
it's good to add some lighting.
Yeah. And the layout of the home also is super important. And when people have been living in their home for a long period of time, 5, 10, 20 years, it works for them. And it's hard for them to kind of look with a different eye on if the flow is right. Give me some of your thoughts on that. I know that we have done podcasts in the past with a stager. Give me some insight into that.
Yeah, at the very least, decluttering. So, there is, there's been a lot of studies out there that have determined that people will pay more for a house when or offer more for a house when they feel really comfortable in that house and are able to visualize themselves living there. So, when there's a lot of distraction, cluttered rooms, personal items, pictures of your family on the walls, they feel like they're in somebody else's house, and it's kind of, they sort of hurry through, they don't really relax. And so definitely making sure that you declutter, that the closets are cleaned out, that it's clean, really thoroughly cleaned, that it's deodorized, that you're not having odd smells. And a lot of times people live in a house and they get used to the way it smells. So if they're pet odors, things like that, you want to make sure that all of that's neutralized. Get some people from the outside in to, really be critical, and, that aren't afraid to offend you and tell you what the house smells like or what it looks like. But certainly decluttering is probably one of the biggest things, the best things that you can do. Get a storage locker and just fill it up with everything that you don't need. I don't necessarily say that you have to get professional staging. It doesn't hurt. There are a lot of staging companies. If you're living there, they will not stage your house with their furniture while you're living inside. But there are services out there that can come and give you design ideas and organizing and staging ideas with your own stuff. So certainly recommend that. And again, a lot of times people think, well, a real estate agent wants to, you know, doesn't want to work or doesn't want to, have, I get that a lot. Like, why eh, do you want me to do all these things to sell the house? Why can't you just, step up your game and sell the house? The idea, I mean, a real estate agent can only do so much. So, our job is to market it, get it out there, negotiate, and, set the stage for the way things are negotiated, the timelines, things like that, and our advice and expertise to give you your pointers on what should be changed or performed before you market it. But just understand, in selling your house, even in a hot market, it may be hot, and of course, everything sells. But the difference is how many people are negotiating on your house. So when you're talking about appealing to more buyers, and you're able to do that in a very condensed period of time, you're really going to get that frenzy going to where they're bidding and negotiating and wanting and being attached to your house. If it's the best, or, a good option, it's the best of what's available, but it's people aren't really flocking, and it really isn't. They're thinking to themselves, well, we might just wait another couple of weeks to see what else comes on the market. You're not driving the right demand. So, we want to make sure that you are extremely prepared in putting your house on the market. And there are things that we do recommend that you do, just like we
Mm,
mentioned.
yeah, and that was a very good point. I mean, you are a team. You're a team with your client. They are doing a lot of work preparing. And sometimes it's hard for them to understand what goes on behind the scenes and how much work really is done. But yeah, I think that's a very good point to be made. A lot of questions that come up, and a lot of what should we do? Should we buy before we sell? Is that what's the best thing for us to do given the market? Does it make the most sense? And what if we need to sell our home before we purchase? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, that's mostly the case. I
Yeah.
mean, the majority of the houses that are being sold, if the sellers are moving up or moving out of state, or even if they're down, I mean, a lot of times, even if they're downsizing, they need the cash out of their house in order to buy another home. It's absolutely ideal if you can buy something before you put your house on the market for many reasons. It gives you the ability to do it on your schedule. It's less stressful. If you can afford it financially, if you can qualify for it financially. The big thing really is, what if you can't?
Yeah.
It's probably, so there's two scenarios. What comes first, right? The chicken or the egg? The two choices that you have are to go out and find a house to buy, put a contract on the house, and then say that it's contingent upon selling yours. The other side, the way of doing it would be to say, let's sell the house and make it contingent on us buying one. There are complexities with both of those, right? Probably if your house is desirable, a lot of the buyers, I mean, we know for a fact that first time buyers make up about a third for the last 3 years of the houses that we're selling. So if you just simply look at the semantics, it's probably a better chance that the buyers out there, depending on what the price point is, and the higher you go, they have even more financial capabilities usually, but you have a better probability in a lot of cases to sell your house first and make it contingent upon you buying something, because a lot of times they can move in with family or friends. We've seen that a lot this year. We've seen people move in the basements of their friends' houses. We've seen people move back home with mom and dad because their leases ran out. We've seen people, do temporary Airbnb rentals until the house was ready for them to buy. So by doing it this way, if your house is very desirable and you have a lot of activity, and you get a buyer, chances are they're more willing to give you that 30 or 60 days to first find a place and making it contingent, because they know you want to sell and they know you're going to try hard to buy.
Hmm.
If you flip that scenario around and you say, I'm going to buy first, put that house under contract with it being contingent upon selling your house, you may have a hard time getting a seller to accept your contract, because we see such a competitive market. And we're going to talk about that. What are some of the complexities with the buyers, and when you're a seller, how do you negotiate those deals properly, making sure you're picking the right offer. But you can see where we're getting at here. So if you try and buy a house with a contingency, the seller, unless you're really giving them a deal that they can't refuse, or they have really no other choice but to take your offer, it's a whole bunch of the same. In my opinion, you're better off selling first.
Yeah. And in this market, it's more, I think, of a confidence thing where that the chances are that you're going to be able to sell your house first. Yeah, I think that that's a better way to go about it.
And I'll say this too, because Melissa, there, as we know, right, there's a lot of stress that goes into buying and selling and buying.
Yeah.
Some of the stress that the sellers slash buyers experience is that they need that cash. So they're aligning the settlements to be almost,
Oh, yes.
they want to close on their house that they're selling at 9 o'clock, they want to settle on the house that they're buying at 11 o'clock or 1 o'clock or whatever. And everything, their tensions are a little high because everything has to work out just right.
Yeah.
And so, that um, there's some alternatives to that too. So sometimes people say, look, I need the cash to make the move. You can rent back. So, a lot of times the seller, we just had that situation not too long ago where we represented the buyer, the seller needed the money. They couldn't settle on the house that they were buying for 30 days because they have things that are going on. Maybe that seller needs time of the house that they're buying. So what happened was they rented back for a month. Actually, I think in the one I'm talking about, it was 2 months. They rented back. The sellers rented from the buyers. They went to settlement. The buyers were living at home with their parents, and they had the luxury of allowing that to make the deal happen.
Yep.
So, sellers, you're in the driver's seat right now. You need smart, competent agents to guide you through it. And sometimes we do ask you to do things to your house to make it more marketable, but you're in the driver's seat.
Yeah. Yeah. And then we get to the part of, getting it ready to go on. And then we have the option of doing a coming soon. And a coming soon is you can have it on 21 days prior to it being live and active on the MLS. And should you list in coming soon status?
100%. 100%. I always say, slow it down. And, a lot of times, and this is agents too pushing it. So a lot of times we just need to take a deep breath and, plan and prepare. I always say, if we can maximize here in Maryland with our MLS, we are allowed to put a home in the multiple list and coming soon up to 21 days before it goes live. And, I know some states have seen 2 weeks. Here in Maryland, if it's a new construction, you can market it and coming soon if you're representing a builder for up to 2 years. So what that does, so just so everybody understands, they subscribe. When you have buyers out there, they are subscribing to the MLS to get alerts that are in areas that they're looking to buy in. And what happens is when an agent puts the house in coming soon, it sends the alerts out, the emails out to those buyers and the buyer's agents to say, this house is coming soon. It gives an estimated projected date for it to hit the market. And, but I do want to say, at least 2 weeks, I'd prefer to market in coming soon. But I also want to say really 2 points here. Number one, put the full-blown marketing package on the MLS. All the photos, not just one. A lot of times we see coming soon status, but the agent will only put one front shot of the house. You're not going to build up a whole lot of excitement and demand where the buyers are going to be flagging those properties or setting their calendar alerts to the day that it goes live. So what we want to make sure is that, you have the agent has all the photos ready to go. Any 3D tours or floor plans. I like floor planning. I think it's critical. 3D tours and floor planning. The 3D tours. I mean, I think everybody knows about them now. And if you don't, it's like Google, Street View. Basically, you can zoom in, but it's inside your house. So they can click with a mouse. We do everything in VR too. So if you have a headset, an Oculus, you can use your mouse and click through and actually, walk through our properties that way. But we also do floor planning, which is critically important because a lot of times the agents will take photos, and it aggravates me sometimes when I'm looking at the primary photo and I see a kitchen or a room or a yard or something like that. I want to see what the front of the house looks like in that first shot. Most people do. And then when I look through the photos, I want it to tell a story. And a lot of times the pictures are disjointed, they're disconnected. You don't know. A buyer who's sitting at home looking for properties at 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock, 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, they don't, they want to experience the house. So, a lot of times the photos don't match up in a pattern that tells the story of the layout. So we always do a floor plan, which draws out the actual plan of the house with measurements of each room. And people can then put those pictures together and see where they are in the house, and they can visualize before they even get to your home, where furniture would go, how they would utilize the space, what kind of a condition the property is in, or what they may need to do. And then that coupled with the estimated date on the market really can build the excitement, um, to build that audience, so that when you hit that active button, when that property goes active, it's just everything's set to just bring tons of traffic.
Yeah. And following up with that, once it's live and once it's on, some people don't feel it's important to do the open houses. Some people feel that there'll be enough showings. It's the way the market is. Your thoughts on that?
Well, my thoughts on that.
They are a must. You
Right.
must
Right.
do
They
the
are a
open
must.
house. Yes.
So here's what we do. I mean, this is kind of in this market how we like to set the stage. I always try to launch on a Wednesday. I think properties should be listed on Wednesday. Wednesdays historically have been days of brokers opens. So back in the day, when we really didn't have the internet like we do today, or Zillow, we would, uh, at the office, the sales office, a bunch of us would kind of caravan and go around and look at the available inventory that is out there for our clients, our buyers. That was how agents really saw what properties were hitting the market. And but I believe there's still a lot of value in that today. In fact, a couple of weeks ago, I sold a property. We listed it day one on a Wednesday. An agent brought their client through the brokers open, and they were actually the ones that ended up buying the property. So I think there's a lot of reasons to have a brokers open. And what we always do is we have lunch. So we send out the emails to the agents advertising that we're having a brokers open. It is live, active at this point. You're not supposed to show the property when it's incoming soon, but we always publish it on a Wednesday, and then we have our brokers open that Wednesday. And basically we provide a lunch through the pandemic. Melissa, we've done a box lunch,
Yeah.
so that they're packaged from the caterer, and so they come through, and we'll do like a gift card drawing for the agent's time to kind of go through the house and give us their opinion on the house and how it's priced, and what they like about it. So it gives us an opportunity to reach out to the brokers that are in that area where that listing is, to call them up and say, hey, just want to let you know we're having a brokers open. It's not far. If you have agents that have, could have buyers, if you don't mind, circulate around in your office. We also kind of team up with a lender or, a title company, and we kind of work that together, those brokers opens. Then Saturday and Sunday, so that's on a Wednesday. Saturday and Sunday, we hit it with our open houses. So this is the time when we're open to the public. So, nowadays, Zillow, Realtor.com, Movado, all these different, aggregating home websites, home search websites will take this data and push it out for us for our open houses. So we find that open houses are important because a lot of times the buyers either A, don't have an agent that they're working with, or B, their agents are busy on the weekend, Saturdays and Sundays, showing houses, and they can only help so many buyers at a time. So it's the ability for the buyer to go check out the inventory themselves, see it online, go and see it during the open house, and then they get excited about it, and get to see it in person at one time. Not only that, but it sort of builds up, you know, a sort of like a hype that is very desired property, because I mean, lately we've been having 20, 25 people come to open houses.
Yeah.
And so when people are walking through and they see 3 or 4 other buyers walking through, they get excited about it. And if they like it, it kind of builds the pressure or the demand for them to act fast.
Yeah. What is the timeline? What should the seller be expecting right now? I mean, you've got it on, you've got it live, you've had the brokers open, you're moving into the open houses. How do things fall into place at this point?
Yeah, for the most part, if that if the property is a hot property and it's prepared and marketed properly, now we're seeing, we list on a Wednesday, we're negotiating offers Sunday or Monday. I had a client say, that they were thinking about maybe, if you get an offer in saying, hey, look, we're going to wait 3 weeks, see what comes in, and make a decision then. And that's not really a good strategy, because what happens is you're going to lose the people that are interested in your house. So if somebody comes in the door and they're like, man, I love this thing, and they give you what you want and more, and you say to them, well, we're going to wait for 3 weeks. And we're going to talk about some of this in a little bit here, because the agents like to do highest and best rounds. And I want to talk about the potential problems with that. But a lot of times when the buyer's offer doesn't seem like it's adequate or good enough, and they know they've met what appears to be your demand, and you're making them wait an unreasonable amount of time, they might find something else. So, you could lose that good offer. So timelines are, we believe if you do it right, within a reasonable amount of time, 3 or 5 days on the market, you should be under contract. Um, Beyond that, we'll kind of talk about, I mean, it's always time is of the essence. So with
Yeah.
everything that we do, the contract's full of timelines. So, the first thing that I do, and that we get the agents here to do, is to go through and take those times and put them on a calendar, because it's important that these timelines aren't missed, not just from us as the seller and our obligations, but in this case, we want to make sure that we're holding the buyer's feet to the fire and their timeline obligations as well. So, once you're under contract, usually, within 5 to 7 days, we're expecting that your property should be under contract in this market. And then really from that point on, any inspections within 7 to 10 days, settlements occurring typically now within 30 to 45 days. Every situation's different, but we don't see like we did back in the day where we were seeing 90-day settlements as the norm. Usually things are closed out within 60 days or less, unless there are other contingencies involved, like home sale or home purchase contingencies. And then on appraisals, and we'll talk about that here, appraisals and financing contingencies, they take all the time. So, if you have a 45-day settlement from contract acceptance, it could take 45 days, day 44, to get the appraisal back and the financing final approvals and clear to close. So that usually runs all the way up to the wire.
How, you just mentioned multiple offers and them coming in and you're expecting them by Sunday evening. How do you make the choice? How do you, not you, but your client, the seller, how are they deciding? What are things that you're pointing out to them that are important?
Well, a lot of what we're doing now is we're using spreadsheets to, kind of lay out the offers. So some of the things that we're considering and putting together, are, what's the price?
Yeah.
So, because price is highly important. What are the contingencies? Do they want a home inspection? Um, what type of inspection? And we'll talk about that, because there's as is inspections with right to terminate, and then there's just traditional, let's have an inspection and negotiate it from there. Um, whether it's cash or financing, and nowadays, whether there's an appraisal contingency or appraisal gap addendums, which means they'll pay more than appraised value. Um, so all those things and more come into the consideration. It's not always the highest price. And because if they're getting financing, they may be the highest price. And if you're only looking at that and it's subject to appraisal, and you're saying, wow, we put the house on the market for 500,000, we have an offer for 600,000. And the agent saying there is no way that this thing is going to appraise for 600,000. Does 600,000 mean anything? The answer is no. It means nothing because it's contingent upon financing. The only way it would mean something is if there is an appraisal gap addendum that basically says they'll pay up to a certain amount over the appraised value, and that's what you're limited to. So, a lot of strategies I've told buyers, and sometimes when I'm dealing with the agent on the other side and we're looking at competing and it's a competitive market, and I'm talking to the agent, what's important? The price is the only thing that's important. It's like, fine, well, let's give them the highest price. What's it matter? Unless they come back and say, well, you pay more than appraised value, we are protected as the buyer to what it appraises for, because the bank's not going to lend, on a house that is overpriced. They're going to want to negotiate that back down to the appraised value. So there are a lot of the considerations. So what we do is we kind of lay it out for our sellers, and there's a lot of controversy. And look, I'm not, I I don't make the rules. You guys can Google the different types of financing yourself. Zillow talks about the difference between conventional and FHA and VA, and but when you're a buyer and you're falling into one of these financing buckets, um, a seller may value a conventional loan over an FHA loan. They could. I don't know whether they will or not, but usually with conventional, they have higher credit standards. And, so does that send a message to the seller? It certainly could. There could be, the risk that the financing doesn't go through. So, that matters. Cash trumps all. If somebody says, hey, we're going to give you this price, we're going to pay you cash with no appraisal contingency and no inspections, or inspection for informational purposes only, that offer may be a couple thousand or $5,000 less than the offer that has a financing contingency on it. The
Yeah.
agent has to be able to kind of decipher that and say, look, these are what you're really deciding on, and this is a guaranteed just about. So the seller has to make that decision.
Let's go into each one of these, negotiating strategies. So you first talked about price. Let's talk about the price, and how would you kind of look at it and see everything and lay it all out on the table for the seller? What are you seeing? What would you advise them?
So, three of the big negotiating tactics, the most important thing, like I said, are price. We'll just kind of take them one at a time. So there are ways to deal with price. A lot of times when I'm looking, I do a lot of conversing with the buyer's agents because I want to try and get some kind of a foundation on what I'm sending over to the seller. And a lot of times you can learn a lot by, agents say things all the time that they shouldn't say. As a broker, or as an agent, you should know your client's confidentiality, obligation. Um, but I see a lot of times they just give the cards away. And hey, if they're going to give me those cards, I'm going to pass them along to my seller. And when we're talking about price, the first thing that I do is I call the agent up and say, hey, thanks, I received your offer. Is this the top end on the price? Is this top end? And, it's just a simple question. And, sometimes I hear things like, well, no, it's not. I told them we should go and hire, but they wanted to start here. I mean, this is great information for a listing agent, right? I
Mm-hmm.
mean, this is important when you're communicating with your sellers. Hey, I got this offer. We're offering it's 500,000. We got an offer for 510, but they'll spend more. Then I'll say things like, are they, opposed to an escalation clause? I didn't see an escalation clause. And oh, will your seller accept an escalation clause? Well, we'll present anything that you prepare. What an escalation clause basically does is it bumps the purchase price up to a certain number, to that buyer's cap. If there is another bona fide offer that exceeds their offer. So I'm asking, look, is this top line, is this offer that you're giving us for 510,000 on the $500,000 listing, is this all of it, or is there, you know, more room to negotiate? Well, why? Do you have other offers? You know, Not yet, but we may. So I'm just trying to find out where you are. There's a lot of activity. Oh, well, they'll probably go up a little bit more. Now, in my mind, I'm making that, I'm writing it down. We can probably move this buyer. Then we get into, well, what about the escalation clause? Can we bump in with an escalation clause, which may say, okay, I have an offer for 510 on a $500,000 house. And they're going to say to me, hey, we will go up to 550, in increments of $5,000 over the highest other better price you may have. So they're at 510, I get a 515. Now that offer with an escalation clause of 5,000 over goes to 520 automatically, right? Up
Mm-hmm.
to a certain amount could be 550. So price is something that you have to negotiate, you have to strategize, but also you have to know where it's going to appraise, because that will be really the next thing that we have to consider when we're considering price. Because, like I just said a little while ago, you could give me $1 million on the $500,000 house. If you're the highest price, but it's based on financing contingency, guess what? We're stuck at appraised value, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it doesn't matter. I could offer you the moon, but we're coming back to the negotiation table, based once we get that appraisal. Now, there are things that I will ask when I know that it's an overpriced sale. Let's just stay on that scenario. It's a $500,000 house, $500,000 house. We have an offer, let's just say for 540. We have an offer for 550, an offer for 560, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it's going to praise more than 510 or 520. So maybe it will, maybe it won't, but I'm concerned about it in this scenario. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back and say, look, will your client gap, based on their price where they are now, is there a gap that of cash they will bring to the table over and above what they're already putting down that will, take you from the appraisal to where your offer is? And, if so, what does that look like? So now I'm working, can we get 20,000 over appraised value, 50,000, 30,000 over appraised value? What's the number? Now, all of a sudden, in that competitive market where I have three great bona fide offers all over what I think the house will appraise, I'm going back and saying, how much cash do they have? Can they pay over appraised value? What does that number look like? And guess what? Now they become the deciding factor, the most important factor. I need to verify their cash. I need to verify with their lender that they're allowed to do that. And, if I get green lights and all that, then my recommendation is we take the highest cash over appraised value
Yeah.
in that scenario.
And this was
So
all 2020. I mean, we saw this so many times and we
all
continue.
2021.
And oh yeah, that's my
Yeah,
my fault.
2021. We started
2021. Yeah.
seeing it in 2020.
Yep. Yep. And now all last year and it still continues and we're, walking into 2022. So, um it's interesting for
Now,
sure.
what I want to say before we move on to the third negotiating tactic. So one is price, right? And two is appraisal gap, um, addendums and contingencies. The the thing I want to talk about price that I see a lot of agents do, and this year I watched um, a lot of buyers fall off, and the wrong buyers in some cases fell off, is by going back to them and saying, we want your highest and best round. I don't even like hearing that.
Mm.
When I see it, it's like an investor strategy, like a bank owned property, that they go and ask for highest and best. When, because as a buyer's agent, my first response is, we gave it to you. Like that I'm not killing the deal for my buyer, but when I hear that highest and best, is like, wait a minute, what do you, I mean, what, are there no counter offers? You're just asking me to compete against myself. And that's what a highest and best round does, right? You go back and you go, we want your highest and best. So what you're doing is you're asking the buyer to compete with their own offer. You're not giving them anything. And what I've seen to happen, and and if you're an agent, you're a newer agent, and you're listening, always listen to your broker. I'm not trying to give you broker advice, other than I'm trying to say that you have to be careful, because a lot of buyers, when they hear highest and best, are like, I'm not getting into this.
Yeah.
I'm not going down this road. I have buyers that are coming in from out of town that are buying a brand new house because they do not want to get into the bidding war. So you're not telling them that they were the highest. They could have been the top offer. They could have been the greatest thing ever. And you're trying to move them even more, with the highest and best round, and they back out, and you go, wow, that blew up in my face. We didn't want them to walk. So just be careful when you're doing highest and best. Ask them, just ask the question: is this the highest? Is this the best? Is this the highest and best? You're not committing to anything. Hey, look, I'm not saying that the seller's not going to take the offer, but I'm just kind of, as the agent, the broker, I'm just saying, hey, is there more to give here, or is this the top end for your buyer? And a lot of times the agents will tell you, and you can, hey, look, I always say, as a listing agent, I don't give out, or as a buyer's agent, when I'm representing, I don't give out information, but that's me. I see agents do it all the time. So if I ask the question and you tell me,
Yeah,
what am I going to do with it?
exactly. Talk about the home inspection. Talk about the
Yep. So that's
different.
really the third
Yeah.
negotiating tactic that we're talking about. So we saw a lot with as is inspections with the right to terminate. And I believe, I don't have factual data to back this up, but I believe with my experience and what I've witnessed myself, that a lot of the houses going back on the market are for the reason of the as is inspection with the right to terminate. What that means is you accept their offer and there's an inspection contingency. And in traditional real estate, in that before we've seen this craziness in the seller's market the way it is, people get inspections, they negotiate based on what they think should be repaired. And as long as the buyer and seller are still talking and they can come to terms on what they'll repair and what they won't repair, pick your things that your must haves. They've gone now to this as is with the right to terminate. So I still want an inspection, but I'm not going to ask you for anything sometimes, but I'm not going to ask you for anything. And if we don't like what we see in the inspection, we're going to walk.
Hmm.
Well, what happens is, does that really do anybody any good here? I mean, as a seller, they want to sell their house. If there are safety issues, if they're learned through the process of the inspection, um, then the seller's going to have to fix them or disclose it. Um, so I mean, let's leave the door open and negotiate. Obviously, the best case scenario is no home inspection, but as a buyer's agent, and I'm with my seller's hat on tonight, but as a buyer's agent, I don't ever like them to take a property without getting an inspection. And as a listing agent, I'm okay with an inspection too. I mean, we're trying to find out ahead of time, disclose what we know is wrong, suggest fixing the things that we know is wrong. if it's minor or if it's major, we disclose it. I'm not afraid of the inspection process. It's better to communicate. So when I have that inspection, I'm calling the agent up and saying, look, are they going to beat us up? Are they going to nickel and dime us here? What's it going to be like? Who are you picking? I mean, is this like the deal killer? I mean, they're entitled
Yeah.
to pick whoever they want. And I'm trying to have the agent say some kind of assurance that, hey, look, we know it's a 50-year-old house, and I'm looking for the warm and fuzzy. They like it. They're not trying to kill the deal. They just want to, get the inspection and then have the ability to talk about it. And you know what? I'm fine with that.
But it does happen. It does happen where, unfortunately, the deal will fall apart, and you can try as much as you can to keep it together. But unfortunate things do happen. And then when you see, that something comes back on the market, is that like a strike against? How do you view that?
I mean, no one likes to see it. It's always the question of why is it back on the market?
Mhm.
So, I have one that, fell through recently because of financing. I mean, you don't like to see it fall through at all, but it does happen. And, uh, what you want to make sure is that you're trying to do the best that you can ahead of time in communicating, feeling out the situation, feeling out the buyer in the deal. These are real people that are buying these homes. In most cases, there are institutional buyers out there or investors that are buying them, and they're just trying to get price and that's it. But when someone is buying a house to live in, you hope that they've had some kind of an emotional attachment to the place, and that you're being mindful of that and trying to work together, being realistic. Look, these are real lives and real people. And I think if you communicate effectively, you have a better chance of making the deal happen. And if you can sniff out the issues ahead of time, I mean, I've had agents say to me things like, I'll say, have you been working with this buyer for a long time? I want to know, I want to have an idea of what we're entering into here. And I've had them say, or, like, yeah, the last three deals have fallen apart. Why? Because of appraisal, because of inspection. Well, what's the first thing I'm thinking about at this point? I'm thinking, well, eh, are the last three houses, you know, crappy, that they looked at, or, are they just unrealistic and, just we're going to have problems too. So it's the more that you can, insist that your agent and ask your agent these questions. If you're listening tonight and you're trying to determine, you know, um, ways that you can work with your agent, hopefully I gave you a couple, tips, that questions that you can write down, concerns that you may have, that you can have those conversations with your agent and ask them how they negotiate, how they're helping navigate this sale process in this market. Because,
Mhm.
you know, in any market, it's stressful. You're uprooting yourself, selling your house. It goes with, stress in itself.
Yeah. And then what if, on a little side note, if there was a home sale contingency from a buyer?
Yeah, so we do get that,
Yeah.
where the buyer has a house to sell. Um, the biggest thing that I would tell you is that that's the case and you're considering taking their offer, it's really important that your agent find more out about the house that they're selling. Go visit the house, pull comps on the house, have the buyer's agent that is going to be listing that buyer's house, have them, let you know what it's going to list for. Um, and it's real important to stay very close to that. Make sure that it's listed on the day that they say. Find out how the open houses are going. If they're having open houses, find out how the contracts are, if they're coming in, they're getting offers. If not, are they planning on reducing the price? Find out what their strategies are. Uh, Another thing that you can do with a home sale contingency is you can put you can put a kick out in, so that if you could keep your house active under contract, and then basically it take backup offers or offers on the house, and if somebody comes along that's ready to move on it, you can kick the buyer that has the contingency out if they don't remove it within the said period of time. A lot of times it's 48 or 72 hours. You'd say, hey, look, I have another offer on the house. They're ready to move. We want to take their offer. We're going to give you your 72 hours to remove the contingency. If they don't have the ability to do it, they get kicked out. Yeah. I mean, it's, not the best scenario for your buyers, but it happens. And the option's there for you.
Mm-hmm. Well, Todd, this was really valuable, super valuable information.
We got a question here from TJ Diamond. Let's, guys, if you're listening, you have a question, go ahead and comment them in. We would be glad to take, as long as it takes here to answer up some questions. So TJ Diamond, thank you so much for watching us. If you're trying to sell a property that is a twin, neighbors are noisy, and I guess he's meaning a duplex. So that's a house that's side by side, and neighbors are noisy. The party wall is plaster. The houses were built in 1910. How can you deal with the process of selling in this condition? This is tough. So, TJ, I had this situation where I was having an open house in a condo that I was selling. And the neighbor, this was on a Saturday from 11 to 1, and the neighbor upstairs decided, I guess it was a good time to clean. And they were banging around, rolling the vacuum cleaner over, making noise. It did stop when, shortly into the open house, but there's nothing you can do about it, unfortunately. There are people that they know when they live with a party wall or in a condo or in a row house, a townhouse community. These are things that they have to live with. So unfortunately, I don't have a great answer for you. Could you soundproof? It depends on how noisy they are. You could probably get into, if the sellers are telling you, hey, look, man, this is a problem all the time. We're moving because of the noise. Then you may want to say, hey, maybe you need to get, some soundproof walls built inside to help absorb some of that. Other than that, you can't make the people move.
Yeah. Yeah.
Clark has said, absolutely don't do a home sale contingency to purchase a property. And that's what we were saying. We were talking about, buying a house and saying, hey, we've got a house to sell first. Unless you're offering them cash at a price that they can't refuse to work with you. And, at the end of the day, and if that were the case and you had the cash, I'd say as the listing agent, just buy it now.
Thanks,
yeah,
Clark.
TJ, it's major repairs. You're right. Soundproofing's major repairs. Very difficult to do.
Yeah. I think though sometimes people expect that though, if you're living in that type, I know it's frustrating as it is, obviously, if you're selling your home, but I think sometimes it kind of comes with expectations.
Yeah. Maybe. And he just commented, thanks, they are renters. And,
yeah.
We see this a lot. I mean, you could try and talk to the landlord about it, have a conversation with the landlord. Unfortunately, people have called the police on people that are making noise. If it's they're entitled to their quiet enjoyment, even they're not being quiet. And landlord won't respond. That's that's tough. It puts a lot of pressure on the sellers for sure.
Yeah.
Now, do I feel that you need to disclose that the neighbors are noisy? I don't think that's necessarily. They're going to see it themselves or hear it themselves. But it's tough.
Yeah, it is.
Look, guys, we really appreciate it. This is the last podcast in 21.
I know.
Yeah, man, I can't. We're excited. We're looking forward to the new year. We have a lot of things planned. We have a lot of things planned for our podcast, our channel. And guys, if you need any assistance in Maryland, please reach out. We do residential and commercial transactions. We do seller, buyer, tenant, landlord representation, and we'd love to talk to you. If you're anywhere else, we've got an amazing broker network that we can point you to that are very competent agents throughout the country. So thanks for watching, and we'll see you next week.